everybody, welcome back to Martha's MS Stem Cell Story. Today's video I wanted to do on the different types of MS. Having had it now for 7 going on 8 years, I've had many people ask me to explain MS, and also being a therapist doing occupational therapy, I have people ask me about MS, and to be honest, even being a therapist, when I was first diagnosed, somebody asked me what kind of MS I have, and to be honest, I didn't know. My doctor didn't tell me, so I had to kind of go back and say, hey, what kind, of MS do I have? And I kind of looked on it online to see what types there were and how many types there were. So the most common type of MS, I have notes over here, so that's what I'm doing when I look away. The most common type of MS is what I have, and it's relapsing remitting MS. And 50% of people with MS have this form of MS. It is relapsing remitting, so it kind of tells you what it is. You can have a relapse. Say you're trucking along doing fine and your symptoms aren't that bad, so then you have a relapse or your symptoms get worse. So that can go on for a period of time, but then you have what they call remitting or remission, where those symptoms and that dysfunction that comes with that go to the prior level of function. So, so it can be bad for a little while, but then you get back to the level that you were before that relapse. So that's the most common type of MS. And also, let me back up just a tad bit, because I made the assumption that people knew that MS is considered an autoimmune disease, and it's caused from inflammation in the spinal cord, the brain, the spinal fluid, and it causes damage to the nerves. The myelin sheath is damaged, and then when your body tries to heal itself, it makes a scar there. So I kind of explained that part to people, like the nerves in our brain and our spinal cord are kind of like an electrical cord, and so the damage done to the myelin sheath is like damage done to the insulation around a power cord. So if you have your laptop or your TV or whatever, and there's damage done to that insulation, when you plug it in, it may or may not work. Or if you jiggle the power cord, it may work better now. Or and even if you kind of tape it up with some electrical tape, depending on where that cord is, it may or may not work properly. And it certainly doesn't work the same every single time you use it. So that's the kind of damage that is done to the nerves in your brain and your spinal cord when you have MS. And depending on where that damage is in your brain will determine what kind of symptoms you have. So if you have, and it's pretty common, a lot of people will have optic neuritis, which is damage to the optic nerves. So then they have vision problems or blurred vision. They may not be able to see out of one eye when they can see out of the other eye. So that's the damage is done to the optic nerve, so that's where you see the symptoms. So so let's keep moving on from there. So like I said, relapsing remitting is the most common. About 55% of people with MS have relapsing remitting MS. This little piece of information I did not know, it's kind of scary. Within 10 years of being diagnosed with relapsing remitting MS, 50% of patients move from relapsing remitting MS to secondary progressive MS. And within 30 years, 90% of patients with relapsing remitting MS move to secondary progressive MS. So that takes me to the second type of MS that is there. And secondary progressive, 30% of people with MS have this type, and it's a steady, slow progression of symptoms and dysfunction and disease. So with relapsing remitting, you may have a relapse, but then you recover to the point of your prior level of function. With secondary progressive, you don't recover. You may get worse for a short period of time, but then you kind of stay there until the next time you have a relapse, and then you get worse. So it's kind of a steady, or I'm going to say steady, it's kind of a slow progression of the disease and the dysfunction. So then the primary progressive, this one, 10 to 15% of people with MS have, and it's a gradual, steady progression of MS. So your symptoms and your dysfunction steadily, slowly get worse. Interesting fact about this is, well, there was 2 interesting facts that I did not know is, it's less common for people with primary progressive MS to have cognitive issues, where you're more likely to with relapsing, remitting, and secondary progressive. And the other thing about primary progressive is that the initial diagnosis and activity is usually in the spinal cord and not in the brain. So that was interesting as well. For primary progressive MS, men and women are equally likely to have it, versus with the relapsing remitting, twice as many women are likely to have that form of MS as men are. So, okay, so the last form, and I hadn't even heard of this one until I started doing this research, is it is progressive remitting MS. And it is a relapse followed by recovery, but not back to the prior level of function. So 5% of people with MS have this one, and that's really the only information I had about that type. So hold on, I'm trying to turn the page here. So progressive remitting is different from relapsing remitting in as much as that when you have a relapse, you do not go back to the prior level of function. But you can kind of stay where you are for a while, versus like the secondary progressive and primary progressive, where it's a more steady downward progression in the disease. So that covers all 4 different types of MS that are internationally recognized. If you have MS or you have questions about MS, please, leave me a comment or ask me a question. Or even if you've gone from relapsing remitting to secondary progressive, or you weren't diagnosed until it did turn to secondary progressive, leave me comments in the comment section about your story and how you were diagnosed. I think that those are things that really help the rest of us, especially somebody newly diagnosed or somebody transitioning from relapsing remitting to secondary progressive MS. I think being really raw and honest with our emotions and just the facts of living and trying to function with MS really does help other people, living in that same nightmare of a disease. So anyways, like and subscribe to my YouTube channel, and find me on Facebook. I have a public group called Martha's MS Stem Cell Story, so you can go and look at it. It's public, you can see everything, but if you also follow and join that group, you will see on your Facebook feed anytime I post something, and this video will be posted there. And I have another Facebook, and it's a page, and so it is called Live Strong and Courageous by Martha, and that eventually will become my business page, as I am taking classes to become a certified health coach. So I try to post just little different things about health and wellness there. If you've been following me, my doctor in Panama put me on a ketogenic diet, so sometimes I'll post some things there about that. So right now it's really meant to be more inspirational when it comes to health and wellness and never giving up. So again, that is Live Strong and Courageous by Martha. So find me on Facebook with both of those pages and our page and group, and I shall see you next time.